Caresoft Technology would like to welcome you to our Splunk and Qmulos webinar. Caresoft is a trusted government IT solutions provider delivering software and support solutions to federal, state, and local government agencies. Caresoft maintains dedicated teams to support sales and marketing for all of its vendors, including Splunk, Qmulos, AWS, Forescout, VMware, and Microsoft. At this time, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. Adam Schaefer, Commercial Practice Manager at Qmulos, Sean Wibke, Senior Sales Engineer at Qmulos. But first, Alex Whitworth at Caresoft would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Alex, and thanks everyone for joining us today to learn more about the Splunk and Qmulos approach to addressing CMMC compliance. My name is Alex Whitworth. I'm a sales director here at Caresoft, and I'm also developing our corporate strategy for CMMC. So as you all know, today's topic is critically important. CMMC will be an important focus for the defense industrial base and government over the next several years. With the CMMC interim rule live now with self-assessment requirements, the first pilot contracts planned for 2021, and inclusion of CMMC language in NDAA 2021. It's important for organizations to get a start now. So Splunk and Qmulos have some great content for you around leveraging a data-driven approach to meeting CMMC requirements. They enable coverage across a number of the CMMC capability domains that they'll talk about. I want to say here, Caresoft has products and services that can help address all of the 17 CMMC capability domains. Feel free to reach out to us at cmmc@caresoft.com or visit our website at caresoft.com/CMMC to browse our CMMC technologies. So with that, I will give the mic over to Adam from Qmulos to kick off the presentation today. Adam?
All right, thanks Alex, and thanks other Alex, and thanks to Caresoft in general for setting this up. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This is Adam Sharper with Qmulos, Commercial Practice Manager. What we're going to do, as soon as I can get this screen share going, is we're going to jump in to a quick background about Qmulos. I've got a couple slides here, and from there we're going to jump into a deeper dive into the CMMC portion of what we cover within Q Compliance. And then at that point, I'm going to turn that over to Sean Wibke, who's our Senior Sales Engineer, who will be walking through the live demo. So that in a nutshell is our agenda for today. Please, by all means, use the chat feature for any questions that you might have. One of us will be monitoring that at all times, so we'll be answering that. And then we'll have some time at the end if there's some extra questions to go over, if anyone wants to unmute and ask them via voice. So with that said, I'm going to jump into a quick overview of Qmulos and our background. We were founded in 2012 by a former DHS executive by the name of Matt Coos. So Matt was running the compliance team back at DHS back in the day, and he and his team helped develop the CDM, which was the Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation Program, which was put together to fortify the cybersecurity of government networks and systems. So it was all run through the DHS via a multi-billion-dollar program for the civilian federal government, and that program, CDM, at the time identified Splunk as the major big data platform, and the issue was that nobody was really achieving that proper compliance on big data, which was the impetus for Matt putting together Qmulos and the applications that we'll be showing today, and ultimately the CMMC dashboard, which is a part of that. So we're so we got that decades of proven IT compliance experience. We're service-disabled, veteran-owned small business, TS facility clearance right outside DC, located in Northern Virginia. We've got the vast majority of our staff is cleared. We're well equipped to handle any secure requirements that are needed for any of our customers. And we always like to mention that we are a Splunk reseller. We work with Caresoft hand in hand as our distribution partner. We provide professional services for Splunk. We partner with them on a lot of their larger implementations. We always mention that because there's a lot of overlap. So, obviously with us being a premium solution for Splunk, it's important for our customers to be running Splunk properly. So that obviously carries over to RD to have a Splunk shop in general. So we have two products that we offer, Qcompliance and Qaudit. So Qcompliance is based on the NIST 800-53 framework and the 6 steps in the RMF as defined there. So we bring in that framework. It was all built around that, and then the custom controls that we brought in. And then we have several other various frameworks that are supported as well. So that's Qcompliance. We're going to be focusing on Qcompliance today because that's where the CMMC dashboard is built in. But I do want to highlight real quick Qaudit, which is built on the Intel Community Standard 500-27, which basically gives you a prescriptive set of controls that you need to be monitoring against insider threats. So if you think back to the Snowden stuff from years back, that's where all that's coming from. That is actually mandated in the Intel community, and it's used as the gold standard throughout the rest of government and on the commercial side for monitoring insider threats, that ICS 500-27. So I wanted to highlight that there. So both products are built as premium apps on the Splunk platform. They're visible on Splunk base, but they're only available directly or through our reseller, Carahsoft, and some of our partners. So I would like to highlight that there. So the bottom line is we're enabling that massive scale of big data while automating security and compliance activities. And so our customers are of all sizes. We've done commercial work, quite a bit of work on the federal civilian side, DoD, Intel, state and local. So we're all over the map as far as that goes, and really want to drive down that focus on compliance, automation, deliver operational security. We're giving our customers the ability to monitor their controls, their technical controls in real time. So what do we do? So we are trying to get everybody out of the repeated data calls business, for the compliance metrics. So collect once, report many times. Deliver that risk management software on top of big data. Again, that's that new paradigm that was brought into the situation years back, where we bridged that gap between big data and compliance, the piece that was missing in Splunk. So you'll see here that we have several frameworks that we support. Obviously, NIST 800-53 was what it was built around, but through that we've also incorporated other frameworks. You'll see FedRAMP here, NERC-CIP on the energy sector, SOX on the accounting side. Quite a few different frameworks that we support. This isn't even an exhaustive list. And then, of course, we have CMMC, which is what we'll be focusing on today. So with that said, this is a quick review of the DoD's cybersecurity maturity model certification, or CMMC, which is presumably the reason you're all here today. So you'll see that the 5 levels are broken out on this chart. So due to the dynamic nature of cybersecurity and evolving threats to the DoD, maintaining a real-time picture of an organization's security and compliance posture against CMMC requirements is critical. The cert covers a broad set of security functions that range from technical controls to policy, procedure, management, and training controls. The evidence to demonstrate compliance with these controls comes from a multitude of IT assets, cybersecurity tools, and other sources. So if you take a step back and look at it, you'll see that collecting this evidence and keeping it up to date could be a very, very labor-intensive process. So if you add this into all the other federal mandates and security requirements, DSS requirements, FedRAMP, 800-171, 53, DoD contractors are faced with a lot of this stuff, and it becomes a very daunting task. So we're here to try to solve some of that issue by automating a lot of this here too. So Qcompliance, as I mentioned, is a purpose-built solution to help you streamline and automate complex cybersecurity auditing and compliance requirements like CMMC. So we'll be able to help leverage industry best practices and standards such as NIST 800-53 to help implement and measure compliance against CMMC. And in a few moments, Sean's going to be showing you some dashboards that are going to help you automatically score your compliance posture against the CMMC maturity models across both the process and practice dimensions. We've also included out-of-the-box overlays that leverage authoritative mappings of CMMC to NIST 800-53 controls in conjunction with custom controls for unique CMMC requirements. And from there, you'll be able to automatically assess and audit CMMC requirements based on real-time log and event data in Splunk to provide an always up-to-date picture of how your organization stands against the CMMC maturity levels. So before we dive into that, I do like to make sure everyone is aware of how we can do this. So obviously the first piece of this is being able to bring your data into Splunk, getting it SIM compliant, making sure that the correct data models are present. So our customers probably have a lot of data coming into Splunk already. We have that PS piece where we can offer some Splunk consulting work to get that in place. From there, we'll take it a step further. And so a lot of vendors, and you'll see some examples of the types of different data sources we can be bringing in. Vendors have different TAs to get you SIM compliant within Splunk, so those are the technical add-ons for Splunk that allow their data to be SIM compliant. And then what we're doing is we're taking that a step further and adding a bunch of our own tags, we call them Q tags, from the various data sources, and so then we make another layer of compliance, which is the QSIM, or the Compliance Information Model. So we're contextualizing everything from a compliance standpoint within Splunk. And so from there, at this point, is where everything's kind of happening under the hood. We pre-built, I think we're up to about 500 searches or analytics based on a control or set of controls that an organization might require. So these searches are going to execute and bring back the data that you're looking for in a control-specific dashboard. And we can bucket this by, depending on a type of customer, FISMA boundaries or systems, or by organization. But the bottom line here is then that we're able to take that 10,000-foot view, leverage our key visuals where you can alert on various things, and actually show your auditors or stakeholders everything in one place. So there's a lot of dashboards out of the box. We can customize a lot of that too. Here's the architecture diagram. It really is very simple here. I mean, this is just talking about deployment time to value, right? So we've got these two apps that sit on top of Splunk. We're really not making any architecture changes. The only thing that we highly suggest, and if you're running ES within Splunk, we mandate that there's a separate search head or search head cluster. So that's just from an infrastructure standpoint, that would be the only modification that needs to be made. But we're not trying to impact our customers' ATOs, that kind of thing. It really just comes down to configuring data sources here. So if you're already bringing in some of these data sources into Splunk, you can start seeing value right away. We'll start tagging it and scoring you against a certain set of controls. And from a CMMC standpoint, you can actually start seeing what you're passing and failing right there. So again, time to deployment value. So it's really quick start for us, and obviously some of that can be configured as well. And so the benefits. So basically, again, that reduction of manual effort and paperwork, the increasing of frequency of monitoring and technical security risk and risk insight, the flexibility to adapt to ever-changing infrastructures. So again, this is using that, moving us away from that traditional GRC model into that big data side, where we're still able to track the same level of compliance, but we're not confined to that level of structure. So we're able to rapidly adapt to anything that you're bringing into Splunk. And again, you've already made the investment into Splunk. This is a bolt-on, right? So you've already purchased the Splunk. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that you can be doing with it, but this is an ROI for that, because now you're bringing that compliance layer into it there. And then that's where your systems are able to align that compliance and operational security set of teams there and improve their overall operational security. So to sum up here, and I'll hand this over to Sean real quick for the live demo. So we can work with any enterprise, any environment, any frameworks, including CMMC and others, so FedRAMPs out there, anything NIST in general. So if you have custom stuff, we can work with it. Controls, again, standard to custom, and data sources. So basically, if you can bring it into Splunk, we can help make sense out of it. So that's my piece so far. What I'll do is I'll pause. If there's any questions, I'll take a look at that and start answering some of them that haven't yet been answered. In the meantime, I'll turn this over to you, Sean, to pick this up for the live demo.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen here. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Whitkey. I'm a senior sales engineer with Qmulos. And what we're going to do today is we're going to walk through Q Compliance. It is our premium Splunk app. It sits on top of Splunk. We preferably sit on our own search head or search head cluster. But we look at that data that's in your indexers and we apply it against different controls that have been applied to your system. So what we do inside of Q Compliance is we actually set up organizational hierarchies based off of your own organization. So we can have multiple different sub-organizations. You can have sub-organizations. We can set this up as intricate and as detailed as necessary to model after your own organization. But then what we're going to do is set up systems. And systems are collections of assets. And that's the level that we apply the controls against. So what we're going to look at today is we have one system in our demo environment here that we're going to look at that's been a set with a CMMC level 3 set of controls. So that includes both NIST 853 Rev 4 controls as well as the CMMC controls, and we're going to look at the scoring for that. We're going to look at how we can dive down into a specific control, and then we're going to look at what we can do with those controls in terms of automating the controls, how we can look at the different types of evidence that come in for the control. We can automate based off the technical evidence. We can set it to automatically pass or fail audits and assessments. From there, we'll take a little bit look at the configuration. Those overlays that Adam mentioned, we'll see how we have those overlays that you can use to apply the controls to your system. And then we'll look at some of the other things that we can do in terms of Q compliance, such as our abilities to track system authorization, the ability to do system continuous monitoring, to take actions based off of alerts, even automatically generate system security plan reports. So we'll take a look at all that, and then we'll wrap it up and we'll answer any questions that you have at the end of the session. So I'm going to start off by looking at the different framework scorecards that we have built into Q Compliance. As you can see here, we have a number of these scorecards that are built in by default out of the box in Q Compliance. We have CMMC, obviously, which is what we're talking about today, but we also have everything from FedRAMP to StateRAMP, NIST cybersecurity framework, CUI critical security controls. We have all different types of framework scorecards built in. But we also have the ability to customize these frameworks. So if you have a framework that's not listed here, we can always build that out. And we can do that through a combination of things. We can set up framework scorecards for it. We can build custom control libraries if it doesn't map to NIST 853. We can really do any kind of customization that you need. And that's actually something that goes for the entire application. Everything that you're going to see here today, everything that we're doing can be completely customized. Now, it's important to note, you don't have to know Splunk in order to use our product. As you're going to see, we can just click on things and it's going to take us into more detail, show us the events behind the visualizations, things like that. But you don't need to know Splunk in order to use Q Compliance. But if you do know Splunk, you can create your own visualizations. You can customize the visualizations that we have. You can customize the dashboards. You can customize pretty much anything that you see. But we're looking at CMMC today, so I'm going to look at the compliance scorecard for CMMC. This is going to show me across the 5 different levels what my scores are based off the process and the practice. So this takes just a second to load up here. And what we're going to see is at those 5 different levels, how we're doing in terms of the different controls that have been applied to our system. What are our percentage scores? We're looking at assessment scores here. We do track both assessment and audit scores. We keep those separate so they don't influence each other. But right now we're looking at our assessment scores. We're seeing the scores for the different levels. As I mentioned, we applied a level 3 set of controls here. So this lets me know how I'm doing in terms of that. I've got an over 98% on my process, and I've got just over 89% for my practice. So it gives me an idea how I'm doing right now. And then I can also see the higher levels. So if I want to move on to level 4 or level 5, I have an idea of where I sit right now in terms of that compliance. And it gives me an idea of where I might need to focus my efforts. If I click on the scores, it's going to give me a breakdown of what those scores are from. So here you see the custom controls for CMMC AC2998. I can see that I'm, document the CMMC practices to implement the access control policy. So that's a policy or procedure control. I can track that. I can click on the practice scores and it'll actually bring up a graphical representation of how I'm doing. I can see pass versus fail and green versus red. And if I click on it, it's going to take me down to that control level. So one of the things I notice here as I look at this practice score is that my AC1001 is a score of 66.67%. I can expand that and it's going to show me the controls that are part of this practice, and it's going to give me an idea of why my score is less than 100. So I see AC3 and AC17 are both a score of 100, which means they're passing, but AC2 is at a score of 0, which means that it's failing. And so that's something that I might want to look into. If I'm looking into my controls, trying to see, why I'm at less than 90% on my practice score. So if I click on AC2, it's going to take me to the specific control. So this is our control compliance hub. Every control in Q Compliance has one of these pages. This is where we track the audit and assessment status for the control. This is where we track the different types of evidence for the control. So as I'm still looking at assessment scores, I'm going to see across the top here my control selection. I see that my control enhancements for AC2 are all passing because they're all green. But I do see that AC2 itself is purple, which means that it's a hybrid control. We do have full support for hybrid and inherited controls. So if you have a provider system, we can track that as well. But looking down from there, I see my audit and my assessment status are both set to failed. So to get more information on that, I can just click on the status. When I click on the status, it's going to give me my audit finding. It's going to tell me what my audit finding is, my status, who audited me, and when that audit occurred. So I have a time-stamped record of every audit and every assessment that's occurred since I've installed Q Compliance. If I scroll down, I can see the details of the control, which include any organization-defined parameters. I can also see supplemental guidance and related controls for it. So I get all the details of the control. I can see that in both the audit and assessment status, all the details of the controls, everything that I'm trying to do in terms of account management, because this is AC2, which is account management control. If I've reviewed the evidence and I've looked at the details, I can set a new audit finding and status here. I can do that because I have the role of auditor. We have expanded on Splunk's role-based access control to add additional roles for the different actions that you might need to take inside of Q Compliance. So only somebody with the role of auditor can set an audit finding and status. Only somebody with the role of assessor can set an assessment finding and status. Even doing things such as running reports are all based off of role. So that way you help restrict to what people actually need to be able to do. Similarly, we actually map users to specific organizations. So that way users only see the data that they need to be able to see inside of Q Compliance. But I'm looking at my audit findings and status here. If I wanted to, I could manually set the audit and assessment status here, but I can also automate that audit and assessment status. So I'm going to scroll down here and take a look at the technical evidence for the control. And this is really where Q Compliance is different from other tools. Because we're sitting on top of Splunk, we're able to look at the data that's in your Splunk indexers and use that data to apply it to the controls. So in the case of AC2, which is account management, we're looking at account management indicators, accounts managed, created, deleted, disabled. We're seeing account management over time by app, top account managers by action, top actions by account type. We're even seeing the security scan statistics. So if you have a tool like Tenable or Nessus, we can bring these security scan statistics in and we can take a look at it and see the benchmark rule results. See what's going on in terms of our STIG checks. I can click on the results and see the details of the rule and what assets are affected by it. But this technical evidence is what lets us also automate the controls audit and assessment status. So to use an example, say I have a policy in AC2 that no accounts should be deleted, accounts should only be disabled. We want to keep those accounts around in case we need them in the future or need to refer to them. Well, if I'm looking at my account management indicators here, I see I have 153 accounts deleted. So obviously I am not in compliance with my own policy. What I can do is I can open this up in a search. It's going to show me the raw data behind it. How many accounts were deleted every day? And then I can save this as an alert. If you're familiar with Splunk Alerts, you know how they work. But in short, what we do is we say we're going to run the search and we're going to take actions based off of the search. So the first thing we do is set the schedule for it. How often is this alert going to run? If we don't have the resources to run it in real time, we can select to run it every hour, every day, every week. We can run it on a cron schedule, so maybe we run it every 15 minutes. We can set the specific time that it runs. Then we say what triggers it. In this case, if the number of results is greater than 0, we're going to trigger this alert. And then finally, we're going to take actions based off of this. And we can chain these actions together to take multiple actions. But Splunk has a number of actions built in out of the box, such as add to triggered alerts list, or send an email, run a script, something like that, we've added additional actions to it. So for example, we could create a plan of actions and milestones based off of this technical evidence. But what we can also do is set the control status. So I can say for my Windows system, for control AC2, both the audit and assessment status is going to be set to failed if any accounts are deleted. And that's how we automate your audits and assessments based off the technical evidence that's coming in. And really, that first off gives you additional ability to respond because it's doing it automatically. You don't have to do a data call to some admins to get that information, look at it, and then say, oh, I'm failing. Instead, it happens automatically. And that really actually helps you with your operational security as well. Because if somebody's deleting accounts, they might be hiding some kind of malicious activity. So if you're monitoring this control, perhaps on our continuous monitoring dashboard, which we'll see in a few minutes, you would see the controls change from pass to fail. You'll know that something happened here. You can take a look into it. You can check the triggered alerts, which we'll see in a few minutes on our system actions page. But you could also look here. For example, this top user, I see that they have deleted 88 accounts. I can click on that visualization to get that raw data behind it. You know, what were they doing with these deleted accounts? What were the events that caused this to trigger? So that's what we can do with the technical data. For any of the technical controls inside of NIST or any of the other control libraries that we support, we can do this. I've been concentrating on talking about NIST 853 Rev 4. We do have Rev 5 also installed. That comes out of the box. So you can have both Rev 4 and Rev 5 controls on the same system if you're trying to migrate from Rev 4 to Rev 5. As I've mentioned, we have the CMMC controls built in out of the box. We also have the CDM controls. So if you need those controls, those are built in out of the box. We have the ability to create custom controls as well. So if you have a mandate or something else that doesn't map to NIST, we can create custom controls for that. We've done that for a number of customers. So in addition to the technical evidence, we also track other types of evidence for each control. Here at the bottom, we have our assigned evidence panel. This is where we track documents and other artifacts that might be generated to show your compliance with the control. And we can do that in a couple of different ways. The first way is that we can actually upload the file. We can choose a file that we want to upload and it will save it on the search head. And then you can use that whenever you're looking at the control to download it and take a look at the file. You know, perhaps it's a policy or procedure document or something like that. You can also provide a link to a website. So if you have your user list for control AC2, you might say, oh, it's on google.com, and you can provide a link to that website. It might be a link to your SharePoint site where you're versioning the document, and it lets people link out to it and view the document as necessary. In addition to that evidence, we also track the human activity evidence. So the first one of those are our control records. And that's where we say that we've actually come in and taken a look at the control. You can see here I have a number of time-stamped records of times that this control has been reviewed. I can add a new one by just clicking on Add New Record and say that I monitored this control, and it will add that time-stamped record that I was here, but I took a look at that control. You'll also see where it says Monitor Technical Indicators for Control AC2. That comes through our continuous monitoring dashboard, which you'll see in a few minutes. Somebody was in the continuous monitoring dashboard, they clicked on Control AC2, and they viewed the technical evidence behind it. It automatically creates a control record to say that somebody monitored those technical indicators. There are a couple other actions that will create control records as well. If I had an alert that went off based off of this control and I deleted that alert, then it would create a control record to say that. If I deleted a POAM that was related to this control, it would actually create a control record for it. We do track POAMs on a per control basis. So we can view, edit, delete them. We can add new ones. As you saw whenever we were looking at the alert, we can also automatically create POAMs based off the technical evidence. We also track test procedures and implementation statements on a per control basis. So we can take a look at these, and these will show up in some of the reporting that we do, such as our security controls traceability matrix and our SSP report. So we track all this evidence for every control. We track the technical evidence, we track the documents, we track the human activity evidence, we track the audit and assessment status. Really, in this control compliance hub, this is the nuts and bolts of Q compliance. We do this for every single control and every control library that we support. But how do these controls get applied to the library to begin with? That actually comes under our configuration section. So for CMMC, we've set up a number of overlays for it. Overlays are collections of controls that apply to systems in order to make sure you apply the proper controls for whatever mandate you're looking at. So for example, for CMMC level 3, we have the list of controls that we apply based off of the CMMC custom controls and the NIST 853 controls. So here for level 3, you see that we have a couple of the CMMC AC controls, AC2998, AC2999, AC3997. And then we have some of our NIST 853 controls. Shows us AC2, AC3, AC4. So these controls get applied through our system management page. So those overlays come out of the box. You can create your own overlays if you have something that you need to apply them for. And then what we say is when we set up our system, we take a look at our system, we determine if it needs a baseline of controls applied. So NSS or NIST, we can do low, moderate, or high. And then we apply that custom overlay to it. So we apply the CMMC level 3 overlay to it, and we'll apply the CMMC controls to our system. The system management page is also where we track things such as our system software inventory, as well as our asset inventory. Because a system is a collection of assets, it's important to be able to really track them, and we provide a few different tools in order to do that. First off is a GUI. We can just search for the assets here. They'll show up. We can check a box and click on Add Asset, and it'll add it to our system. We can upload a CSV file. So we have a CSV file. It needs to have at least one of the 4 fields that you see here: fully qualified domain name, host, IP address, or MAC address. It needs to have one of those fields filled out, and then you can upload it and it'll add it to our asset inventory. And then finally, we can do a system tag. And a system tag is basically a Splunk query that looks for assets inside your Splunk environment and dynamically adds them to your asset inventory. So if you're dealing with a lot of cloud machines, for example, virtual machines are powering on and off, then you might use a system tag in order to be able to update your asset inventory without having to manually go through and check it each time. Our configuration page is also where we do custom controls. So as I mentioned, we have a number of control libraries built in out of the box, but if you have a mandate that doesn't map up to one of them, we can always add custom controls to it. So here we're seeing our Q custom controls that we've set up on our demo environment. And these are just a few controls with a couple different control categories. And if I click on them, you're going to see that they have the same kind of information that a typical control out of the box does. It has the control name, title, description. It's going to have any organization-defined parameters that we want to set for it. It can have supplemental guidance if we want. And we can add visualizations to it. So as Adam mentioned, we have hundreds and hundreds of visualizations built in out of the box. And if we want to add one of them to our control, all it takes is searching by keyword and then clicking on the box to add it to the control. That's how easy it is to customize the control to add a visualization to have technical evidence there. And that includes if you create your own visualization. If you create your own visualization based off of our data models, you can add it to any control that we have built in out of the box. If I created an account management control, I can just search for control AC2, for example, and add that visualization to it just by checking the box there. So that's a little bit of the configuration of Q Compliance. As you can see, there's a lot to this page. There's a lot of configuration that can go on. We do have training that we do for our end users and for people who are going to be deploying Q Compliance to really help go through a lot of this. But now that we've looked at our CMMC framework, we've looked at the overlays that apply the controls for it, we've looked at what we can do with one of the specific controls, there's much more to Q compliance that we can still do. For example, we can track the system authorization of our systems. This is going to give us our system authorization information. We can see any details here. We can see previous authorizations that have happened. We can see our assessment information, how we're doing in terms of our scores, which controls are passing, which ones are failing, which ones are not reviewed. I can see the POAMs that are part of my system, any documentation that helps support my authorization. And so if I want to, I can just click on Add New Authorization and add a new authorization manually. But just like with the controls, we can actually automate the authorizations as well. So typically, based off the true assessment score, we would automate based off this score. These 3 scores are based off of your assessments for your authorization. The assessment review completion says what percentage of all the controls have been reviewed. So in this case, we've reviewed over 99% of the controls. And by looking at this assessment information, you can see in yellow the 2 controls that we haven't reviewed yet. Of the controls that we've reviewed, 92.11% are passing. So we're doing pretty good on that regards. And that means out of the total number of controls, over 91% of our total controls are passing currently. So based off of this score, we can automate the authorization. We would set up an alert just like we did for the control, and we'll set that alert that if the assessment score goes above 80%, for example, that we get an authorization for the next week or for the next month. And if the score drops below a 60%, we can set up an alert that will automatically rescind our authorization for the current time. In addition to authorization, we have system continuous monitoring. This is looking at your most important technical controls on a daily basis and seeing in real time if they're passing or failing. So here we see the controls that we've decided we want to see. You select which controls apply on here. And if we click on the control, it's going to show up and show us the technical evidence for the control. So I clicked on AU2, it's showing me the technical evidence for the control. It's also going to automatically create that control record to say that I monitored the technical indicators for control AU2. So I can see all this information. I can perhaps look at a failing control to get an idea of what's going on. So CM8 is failing. I take a look at it. I'm looking at the technical evidence. And one of the things I see here is my discovered software. I see Adobe Flash, and I know that's not on my authorized software list. So that could be why my control is failing. If I want to look into it a little further, I look at my system actions page. This is going to show me items requiring action as well as compliance indicators. What have I done this week? What needs to be done? So here I see my failing audits and assessments, my overdue items. I see alerts triggered this week. If I click on that, it's going to bring up my triggered alerts. And I see right here at the top of the page, CM8 had an unauthorized software alert that triggered yesterday morning at 3 a.m. I can open this up in a search and take a look and see what happened behind it. I can delete the alert, which will create that control record to say that I deleted the alert, or I can create a ticket for it. And we've actually built a ticketing system into Q Compliance in order to help remediate these alerts and help promote the workflow for them. It's not intended to replace a ticketing system that you might already have, but I see that I already have a couple of tickets involving CM8 right here that I might want to take a look at. If I look at my compliance status, I'm going to see CM8 here at the top failed its audit and assessment at yesterday morning at 3 a.m. So when that alert went off, it also failed the assessment. If I look at the control activity, I'm going to see that I monitored the technical indicators for control CM8 just a couple of minutes ago. Same with AU2. And then there's that AC2 control record that I created when we were looking at AC2. I can see the details of my POAMs across my entire system. We actually have a couple of different places where you can see your POAM information. You saw it on our system authorization page. We have our POAM activity here. We actually have a POAM overview page, which is more of an executive level view of what you're trying to see with your POAMs. So we can take a look at our POAMs, see which ones are overdue, which ones are in progress, see what the status breakdown is for all of them. We also have the schedule for the items. Every control that we apply in Q Compliance has a schedule set for it for how often it needs to be audited, how often it needs to be assessed, and how often it needs to be reviewed. So we set those schedules up, and then we can see it in the schedule items panel, and we can actually build alerts based off of this. So for example, we see here we have some controls that are overdue. We could set up an alert that sends an email or creates a trouble ticket when an item is overdue for audit or assessment. And then the final part of our system actions page is actually so popular, we've given it its own page. We have the ability to automatically generate system security plan reports. So our SSP page shows us our current system SSP data. Do we have our ODP set? Do we have our implementation statement set? What about our control origination? Do we have all that information set? And then from there, we can generate SSP reports based off of different templates. So built in currently, we have 3 different templates. We have our default template, which we've always had. And then recently we added the support for FedRAMP for both a moderate and a high SSP template so that we can actually generate SSP reports based off of those. I'm going to go with a default SSP, and I'm going to generate the new SSP. It's just going to take a minute for it to generate a Word document that has the information about my system in Q Compliance. So you see here, I have all the previous ones that I've created. So if I want to go back in time and look at a previous one, I can do that. But I can just download this SSP report to my system. And I can share this SSP report with somebody who doesn't have access to Q Compliance, or I can change it. I can take a look at it. I'm going to see the system attributes for it. I see the system assets that are part of my system here. I'm going to see my authorized software that's on here. I see my blacklisted software. And then I see the details of my controls. So for example, for AC2, which we were looking at previously, we see the frequencies for the controls. So we see that the monitoring frequency is set to 1 day, which is why it was on the continuous monitoring dashboard. We see that it's a hybrid control, and so we can see what the control provider is for it. We see the audit finding and assessment finding for the control. And then we see the details of the control with the organization defined parameters, with the supplemental guidance, and even the implementation statement for the control that we had in there. So all this information is automatically collected into an SSP report, and you can generate them just by clicking a button. That's just one type of reporting that we do. We do have a security controls traceability matrix, which gives us a point-in-time view of our test procedures, our implementation statements, our audit and assessment status. We can see all of that in a single point in time and see how we're doing in terms of that. We actually have an entire page dedicated to different types of reports that we can do. So we have different reports that are built in out of the box. We also have the ability to integrate with other GRC tools. So for example, we have EMAS built into here. We can integrate with EMAS in terms of the test cases and the POAMs. We can export our own POAMs and test cases and then upload them into EMAS, or we can upload the POAMs back. This is a brand new feature that just came in the latest release. And in future releases, we're going to be expanding on our integration with EMAS, as well as adding integration for other tools. We're working a lot with RSA Archer right now, so we're going to have the ability to integrate more with that. Part of Q Compliance as well is the ability to do a health check on it. So our control monitoring coverage dashboard shows us our visualizations and basically provides a health check of whether or not we're getting all the data that we need to our visualizations. So here, if I click on a green one, I'm going to see that all my visualizations have data. Everything's coming in, it all looks good. If I click on a yellow or red one, it's going to indicate to me that some of the visualizations are missing data. So if I click on the name of the visualization, it's going to give me the information that I need in order to determine why this visualization doesn't have any data. So for example, here we're looking at recently created temporary accounts. One of the important things is this. It's only showing accounts where the days active is less than 50 days. So we're looking for these temporary accounts. And what I'm looking at is the data models. Which data models am I looking at? I'm looking at my Q account management data model. Which indexes am I looking in? We've got our indexes alias to the main indexes, which is a number of other indexes inside of there. That's part of the configuration of Q Compliance, is defining which indexes you look in. What fields am I looking for? And then finally, what tags I'm looking for. If you remember from what Adam was saying about how we do the compliance information model or the QSIM, a lot of that is tagging the data so that it's properly brought into the correct data models, and then we can do our analytics against it, which lets us create our visualizations. So have we tagged the data correctly? Is it actually showing up? This gives us the information that we can take to our Splunk admins and see why this visualization doesn't have any data. So it could be that we simply have no recently created temporary accounts, and that's why we have no data. It could be that we're looking in the wrong indexes, or we don't have the right tagging going on with it. But this lets us do a health check and see how this is going. And it's used a lot by our consultants whenever they're doing the initial installs of Q Compliance to make sure that all the important controls, all the ones that are needed for the user, are actually getting all the data that they need. So that's an overview of Q Compliance and how we do CMMC inside of Q Compliance. With that, I'm going to see if there's any questions or any comments that we need to address. Okay, I see a question that just came in, wanting to ask about the cost of Q Compliance.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Got it.
So I'll let Adam handle that question.
So we have a license based off of your Splunk ingest. So it's a term license, 1-year term, and so the cost is contingent. So if you're doing 50 gigs a day Splunk, we would do a SKU for Q Compliance based on 50 gigabytes per day. It does not cost as much as Splunk, but the pricing model is not linear. So the higher up you go to a terabyte to multi-terabytes, it obviously plateaus in a discount level and a volume discount level. So that would be the best way we can answer that for you.
So the management of the solution would be performed by how many employees? That really depends on your organization size. So a lot of times we see people that, they just have one person dedicated to it. You might have an entire team. It might be big enough. We have some environments where it's big enough that they have a search head cluster running so that they can have dozens of people all using it at the same time. It really depends on the size of your organization, the size of your Splunk ingest, things like that. It's variable, but it's a pretty straightforward application. So if you have qualified Splunk admins, it's easy for them to keep it up to date. And it's, like I said, we do provide a good bit of training that people can take in order to learn what they need in order to run it. Do you have a Kibana variant? We only run on top of Splunk. We are a Splunk only shop, so no support for Elk Stack or anything like that.
Any other questions?
Yes, I believe Alex said that they were recording this session, so I can see the recording light running up in the corner. So I believe at the beginning he said that they would be sharing it with you guys, so we can do that. If you want to reach out to Adam or myself, we can also provide you a slideshow if you want to share it with somebody.
And And also we're able to do a dedicated demo that's sort of tailored to your requirements. So anybody who's on the line that wants to get do a more in-depth demo focusing on CMMC, we could also cover Audit, which we really only talked about. We didn't show it today. So there's obviously some crossover in that. So we could certainly cover that. So please let us know how we can help. All right, well, let's see, I got one more coming in.
Yes, we like I showed you, we do automatically generate SSP reports. We track the POAMs on a per control basis. Variances, I'm not sure on. I would have to check and follow up on that. But we do automatically generate SSP reports. Our POAMs are tracked. We have the multiple different dashboards for the POAMs, as I showed you. So, and then the POAMs also can be exported into an Excel formatted sheet too. All right, I think that looks like it for the question. So we can hand it back over to Alexander.
Perfect. Thank you, Adam and Sean, for the webinar. I'd also like to thank all of our participants for being with us today. We hope this webinar has been helpful for you and your organization. If you have any questions or would like to request more information, feel free to contact the Splunk and Qmulos team at Caresoft. Our contact information is being displayed on your screen, so please don't hesitate to call or email us. Thank you and have a great day.